All right, there we go. We're live. Come on in here, beautiful people. Let me share and invite some other people to be a part of this. We're going to have a great morning. I'm excited about this conversation. So please pop on in here and let me know where you're watching from. I promise you're going to enjoy this morning's conversation. So pop in. Let's see who's going to be the first person to dive on in here. And then let's see who's going to announce where they're watching from. All right, Miss Wendy, good morning. Good morning. Where are you watching from, Miss Wendy? All right. Let's dive in, guys. All right. I want wherever you're watching from, please go ahead and announce yourself and let us know where you're watching from. Good morning. How many of you guys are ready for Christmas? How many days is there before 2021? Wow. The Bahamas is in the house. Ro, what's going on? I know the Bahamas was going to represent. Listen, any of my friends in Canada watching, Jamaica, come on in, Jamaica, and let me know you're watching. Let's see what's happening over here. This morning, I'm honored and privileged to have, all right, good stuff. I have Pastor Kelly James joining me this morning live on Effective Living. A few months ago, Pastor Kelly was able to lead the conversation on my book. Pastor Kelly, you took your picture with the book, highlighted it and featured it. I appreciate you so much. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you, Ricardo, for allowing me to come and hang out in your effective living space. I'm excited to be on this morning.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I'm excited for you, man, on your journey. I thought this would be real cool for people to get a little snippet of, Kelly James and his journey. And so let's start off by basically helping people understand you and your early development into ministry, into becoming a worship pastor, and now moving into a lead pastor. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I'm like many. I grew up in church. Was blessed to have parents that brought me to church. My parents, they were saved when I was 2 years old. They walked down the aisle and gave their heart to Christ. When I was 2 years old. So from that moment on, man, we just got involved in a local church. So I grew up, I didn't know anything but church. I mean, it was there every time the doors open. Many old school people remember that. Now we do church where we can do virtual, but back in those days, it was like you just, anytime the doors were open, you better be at church. And so I grew up there. I found my musical journey in church, started playing drums at a young age. About every boy under the age of 10 wanted to play drums, and I was one of those kids. I just kind of started on that musical path there, and got a little bit more involved in music as an early teenager. Started singing and playing keyboard, and just kind of went from there, and just served any way we could, and just tried to develop a gift of music while I was there. So that's kind of the way it all began.
So you telling me, I didn't know you played the drums. I didn't know you.
I don't play the drums around people anymore. At our church, we got too many great drummers for me. They don't give me the sticks anymore. They're like, no, you just there, yeah.
But you know when they're playing right though.
I sure can tell when they're playing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sure can.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I know. You started off playing the drums, beating the drums, keyboard. You did a little strings, right? I've seen you with the guitar, man. I'm telling you. How many instruments do you actually play?
I 3 or 4 instruments probably. Again, we've got some great musicians, so I kind of bow down to them because they are the professionals. And I get around a few instruments, and something just kind of a part of my life. My dad and my mom, they created. We had music in our home growing up, and even though they aren't musicians, there was always music involved in our house. So it just
Gotcha.
latched on to me at a young age.
That's good stuff. Let's talk about then your journey into becoming a worship pastor. How did that evolve, and what were some of the experiences that were significant for you in that season?
Yeah, the worship thing, I just kind of stumbled in, and it really was just after I finished school. I began to travel around with some bands and play music, and just that was my goal, is just to do that and just play music, traveling, and was doing my very best to keep that dream alive. Of course, I was young, trying to find my way, but we were all young, so there wasn't the structure that was in place to keep that dream alive. We needed probably a good mentor. We probably needed a good Ricardo Miller to help us live effectively with our ministry. And but we didn't. We were all under the age of 22, and we were just out there just having fun and jump from church to church, from youth group to youth group, concert to concert, and just doing that. So that kind of ran its course. A lot of them were slowing down, getting married, and just we were hungry. we were real hungry out there, and so we weren't making a lot of money to live. So priorities just began to change. So I didn't really know what to do. So I just went to church. It seemed to all kind of start slowing down, and so I just went to the church that I'm now a part of, and I'm going to be lead pastoring soon. I just went to the church because my parents went there, and of course I had experience and knew my senior pastor was there. So I just didn't know what to do except to go to church and just wait on the Lord. And I happened to meet my wife in that season, so that definitely changed my focus, because she was beautiful, so she really changed my focus. And so I really just stumbled into the music ministry thing that way. I didn't know anything about leading worship, because we were doing more, I guess, performance Christian music. There wasn't any worship leading. The only worship song that I knew was "I Exalt Thee," and that was the truth. And so I've kind of found my way into helping the church out, and it was a lot of on the job training. It was just a lot of learning as we went. Fortunately, the church allowed me to grow with the church, and I'm just grateful for the opportunity that was given.
What an experience, man, because I know there must be a tremendous lesson to work with a church in its growing season from maybe 100 members to a few hundred members to going into 1,000 members, you know what I'm saying, to multi-site, multiple sites, of transitioning from one season, from creating bands and stuff. What would you say was your proudest moment as a worship leader, or give us a few of them that really just stood out to you in that area of your life when you were really in it?
I think as a worship, we've recorded some CDs. That was definitely some proud moments. I mean, we've been able as a church and as a worship team in our church to lead worship at conferences. I've been able to speak at conferences and on worship leading, and a lot of those proud moments. I think the proudest moments are just the worship moments that have happened with the team, and just there. I just became addicted to just those moments where God just shows up, and being able to learn how to navigate as a worship leader those moments was just something that I really became attracted to. And I say this all the time, God is always moving the door to his presence, and so there's not a formula to finding God. It's all in the seeking, it's all in the chasing. And so when I learned, when I realized that, it kind of gave me a buy-in to realize that God wants us to chase him in worship. And so it was those moments that I think were the proudest, being able to kind of, I guess, find him, so to speak, find him in those worship moments were just something that I think were probably the proudest moments that I can recall.
Nice. Would you say that over the years you've discovered that if a person were to enter the sanctuary, they were to come into a meeting or tap into a level of clearness of mind, they can enter the presence. What is your tip? Before we move on, to those who need to tap into worship even more and embrace what it could do for them on their walk with God? What would it be that would be the thing that you're like, hey, leave it at the altar, learn to surrender? Remember the song, I Surrender All? Songs like that just sort of spoke right to it. But there are people today, they can hear the music, they don't engage themselves with the presence that the music is trying to bring. Is there anything that you would say that, hey man, for those of you that are watching, you're a member of a church, go in there with the anticipation to receive from that particular area of the service? What would it be?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is I'm back to the worship leader. I think the worship leader, a good worship leader, knows how to navigate moments that invite people. Worship leading isn't it's not a performance. It's not a listen to me sing. It's not a hey, look at us. And so I'm kind of back to the worship leader. I think it's the worship leader's responsibility to make sure that you're creating a place where people feel invited. Then I think it's okay to talk about it. I think it's okay during a worship service to educate on worship, because I think probably majority of the people that come to our churches, I don't want to say majority, but a lot of people at our churches, they don't really understand why we're doing this. Why are we standing up here? Why are some people doing this? Why are some people responding in this moment? And some people are going, well, what's going on here? So I think it's important that worship leaders teach the moment, because worship leaders are creative people, and sometimes we can get so lost in the art that people are just watching us instead of engaging us. And so I really believe that it's the worship leader's responsibility to show and to train people to find every measure and use every vehicle to be able to bring people in to the presence.
I totally agree. Wow, that's so good. Let's dive in here. I want to pick your brain on this, and that is, you've done ministry for a while, and more than 25 years. You don't look too much far from 25, man.
Bro, I love you. I'm buying your book again.
But for those who are coming up, there are a lot of people who would say, I feel ministry in me. And I mean, their first and second year, they're starting to get weary and well-doing. It's like, hold on, what did you just say? You're tired? You just started. I mean, you've just been in a year. And so I don't know if there's people are a little bit weaker when it comes to commitment and the tenacity necessary to sustain a walk that some would say people of old had, or more seasoned saints had. So you and I have been around church for more than 25 years. In your opinion, young ministers coming up, what are some of the common mistakes you're seeing that's sort of hindering them from what we would call elevation in ministry?
I definitely, I mean, you're right in the lane of what my heart is. I mean, I have a passion to see young ministers come into ministry, worship ministry, just any service ministry of the church. I think one thing that's got to be taught to those that are coming up, I guess it would be a mistake, is honor seems to be something that feels like it's dying.
Wow.
I think there's a lack of honor, and it doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's a lack of disrespect. I mean, I'm not saying that there's kids that do not appreciate those that have paved the way, but I think there is just, I think, the Bible's clear about what honor means. In fact, those that are the teacher of the word, they're worthy of double honor. I think that's a principle that is healthy. I think it's healthy for honor to be passed down from generations to generation. So I see honor. That's a concern to me, because I don't see the honor that I mean, you probably know when we first came into ministry, it was like when that man or that woman of God was over our life. I mean, it was an expectation that we honored them. And I'm not saying that we put them on pedestals or we put them higher than God and something like that, but we had a respect and an honor for them. And so I see that being a mistake. Another mistake that I see is, and this is not just a mistake that's for the up and coming, but I think it's a mistake that we've seen a lot this year, is the inability to control one's emotions. I think we are we have seen in 2020 where there have been many people that have failed the emotional test of being able to. I think ministers, there's a requirement that you've got to be able to pull back your emotions, even from what's going on around us. You still have to remember that you're in the world, but you're not of the world, and there's an expectation that comes on our life that we've got to be able to just control ourselves, because when we as ministers begin to lose ourselves and lose our emotions, then there ain't nobody driving the car. I mean, there's no one that's leading us to God's grace and God's favor and God's provision. And so I think an inability to control emotions, and I think my last thing that I see mistakes that are made for upcoming ministers is not having a good amount of strong voices in their life. I think a lot of people are trying to just do it themselves. And I mean, the way I came up, and I don't know if this is the way it was with you, but the way I came up, and I'll go back to music ministry, is, if I was running 35 people in my choir, and I knew somebody in the city was running 55 people in their choir, my responsibility and what I felt like I need to hook up with them and talk to them and find out, how can I get my choir to 55 people? And so and that was just a natural thing that you did. And I think that's a dying breed. I think a lot of people are relying not on relationships to do those. I think people are relying on technology. And I think people just need what we're doing now. They need conversations. Everybody needs somebody to stretch them. And I think strong voices in our lives are important. I mean, I say this, many people have a weapon for ministry, but don't know how to use it yet. And what happens is when you have a gift that you don't know how to use yet, then all of a sudden you become a little frustrated because you don't feel like you're hitting the mark. And that's kind of where I think people die out, is because they want to do it so bad, but there's no strong voices that are guiding them and saying, hey, don't do this, try this. And so I see that as being less and less.
That's really good.
What I see at this time,
Man, wow, that's really good. Let me ask you this. Let's go back to that first one that you mentioned about honor. Do you think familiarity kicked into that, a little common element? Because we live in a society now, back in the day, you didn't even get as close to the pastors and so forth, or the man of God, or whatever people would say. And we've moved away a lot from that, because, ministers today are wanting to be a lot more approachable. They're wanting to be among the people. They want to connect with the people. But in connecting with the people, could it be that somewhere along the line, some people have disregarded the fact that this is a person that really could help me, but I don't need to get so familiar with them that I disregard the possibility of getting the help because I see them so common?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that is a style of leadership that is a lot more common now. The more relatable leader, the more like, hey, I want to be your pastor, but man, let's go to Starbucks. And let's just, I mean, a lot of things that when we were coming up, it was, and of course we know our pastor, and he was very relatable and is very relatable. But it was more like, I had a lot of meetings in his office, it wasn't about us meeting Starbucks. It was like, hey, come in here, I need to talk to you. And I think that established an honor. I think that established an honor. And so I think that it just has to be taught. I think we can be relatable. I think our style of leading people, our style of shepherding people, of pastoring people, I think is fine. But I think there has to be an intentional talk of what honor looks like. And and it's like where our church is, honor is a big thing in our church. I mean, I've witnessed our pastor that showed honor to people, and so it's my responsibility to keep that rolling and to keep that and to realize that's a core foundational value of our church. And so I'm going to just do my best to teach the next generation what that looks like.
Yep, that is so good. As you just mentioned, you and I have the distinct privilege of having been led by our Pastor Danny Wegman. Pastor, love you. Now, one of the things we knew, both of us, and I know a lot of people watching, normally, this is how I came up. When you get to hang or be in the presence of your senior pastor, like Pastor Danny, you're wanting to listen, you're wanting to learn, you're wanting to glean. There was no equal par. There is no common say. There is no over familiarization of who we are. You know, unfortunately, that definitely is something that's moving away. You mentioned something else as well. Accountability. People that's in your life to help you, but you need to now pull on that. Let's talk about just for a minute, why do you think people aren't embracing the help that is assigned to them? Is it that we, as a society, from a ministry standpoint, are we becoming a little bit self-centered? We may not call it self-centered, but independently desiring to grow, not realizing growth happens best in a community of good people, in a network of good people, in a circle. They have what they call mastermind groups, classes, instructors, leaders. All of that is there to help. Do you think that there are more people who are finding their call, but independently trying to develop their call?
Yeah, I do. And really, honestly, I think technology is one of our greatest blessings and one of our greatest downfalls.
Yeah.
And I'm not anti-technology.
Yeah.
Clearly, we're not. But I think when we rely on YouTube to be developed, and we rely just on books, and we just rely on those things, audio books and all those, and that's great. And I'm not against it, but I mean, the Bible is clear. I mean, it was Timothy that walked alongside Paul. And there was something, of course, the Bible doesn't record it all, but there was a transferring that was taking place that we definitely see in the pages of the Bible. But there's many transferring moments that wasn't recorded. And I think it was just walking out things together. I just think there's something about the doing the life together. It's the community. It's the hey, don't do this, or hey, it's just, and I remember that when I first came into ministry, before, I came into ministry before there was a lot of technology. We had books, obviously, and I would go to conferences and I would try to learn, but I'm telling you, I learned my most from Pastor Danny riding in the passenger seat of his car.
Yes,
and,
right.
And it's taking me alongside, and hey, we're going to make a hospital call, and there's a protocol of how you make hospital calls. It wasn't like, okay, Kelly, I'm going to give you 5 things of how to make a proper hospital call, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it was like, you just do what I do, you just do it like I do, and it was Paul that said that, just do it like I do it, and then you'll learn how to do it.
Yes,
and that's really what it was. It was just spending. It was a lot of lunches. It was a lot of meals. It was a lot of prayers for those that were sick. It was a lot of running here and even running to Home Depot and picking up paint because it was a lot of that. And whereas probably in the early days I didn't appreciate it and probably hated it some days, but I see the value in it where I'm at this stage of my life.
Yeah, someone once said certain things are caught, not taught.
Right.
And that's the beauty of being in the presence of someone who has the ability to teach you, different than that of the book or the video and so forth. And so I definitely agree with you. There's so much being lost in that particular area. Let's move on. What would you say? Okay, I want to ask you this question, man. 20-year-old Kelly James. Okay, 20-year-old Kelly James. If you had to sit down and have a conversation with him, tell us a couple of things you would say, and maybe some of it might have been threaded through what you've already said, but at this age for us, we can look back now and be able to identify, this is what I would say.
Yeah, I think I thought long and hard about this question, and I think one thing that would, if I could tell myself back in the early days when I was 20, is don't listen to people that don't know you. Don't listen to people that don't know you, because when you're in my world of church, there's a lot of people there, and there's people that love you and you love them.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you know them and they know you.
Yes.
And so I think as a young, impressionable guy that came in, that had a little bit of a talent, that got some momentum pretty quick in the area of music, everybody wanted to felt like they could speak into my life. Well, what happened is the people that didn't know me, they weren't qualified to speak into my life. And so I felt like, because I needed to honor them and honor their age, that I needed to allow all those voices in my life. And people that you allow to speak in your life, they may not have your best interests. And while they will leave you, the words spoken over you will stay with you. So they'll come and they'll go. But that opening of them speaking into your life, that will linger. And it's not life-giving stuff. I'm not saying that some of it wasn't, but it was more of something that kind of got in my mind, that kind of messed with my brain. And I felt like it held me back in some areas of my life. And when I needed to be selective and go, okay, here is my group. These people speak into my life, and not everybody. And another thing too, and this is going to be kind of a weird thing, but finding a healthy balance between confidence and arrogance. Finding a healthy balance. And I know where, because I'm a music guy, I know where everybody's mind is going. Okay, Kelly, you were probably arrogant, and I probably had my arrogant days, but you were probably arrogant, and that really wasn't my story. When music came fast to me as a late teenager, early 20s, and it came real fast, and I was learning quick, and I was just all in, and I was practicing. I mean, it was really developing quick. Well, everybody tagged me because of the speed in which I was developing. Everybody tagged me as arrogant. And I remember just feeling, I was like, man, I don't feel like I'm arrogant. Like I said, I'm sure I was a little punk kid at sometimes. But I felt like, because I knew my mama was around, I knew my daddy was around, I knew they would get me in shape. I mean, I had people that would, my parents that would make sure, hey, you better watch yourself. You're gonna fall if you don't get yourself together. But it was the arrogance, that caution of arrogance, actually in a weird way affected my confidence.
Wow.
Because when you lead, you've got to have a level of confidence.
Have to.
And so I would play off of anything, because I was so afraid that I was going to be tagged with something that I didn't really feel was in my heart. That's a really weird twist on that, but I think it affected my confidence. So I would walk into rooms like I was meant to be there. I would stay on the sideline, and it really has taken me most of my life to walk into a room and go, I belong here. And so that was a big thing for me. I wish I would have told myself, I said, listen, find that good balance between arrogance and confidence. You sure can't be prideful. You sure can't be arrogant. That's not an option. But don't go so extreme that you don't feel like you belong in rooms, and you don't feel like you belong on stages and platforms. You need to still walk in that confidence. So
that is so good, man. I remember going through a season of trying to figure that out for myself. And I like what you said. I've had those moments where they're like, that boy a little cocky right there. He's just a little much, right? I get it, right? But what I found, and share your thoughts on this, what I found, and for you who have had such an phenomenal career in music and leading, what I found is that on a scale of 1 to 10, someone who, let's just say they're at the bottom of the bucket in relations to no development, nobody's pouring to them, nobody said anything to them, and then you walk into the room and let's just say you're 15 years back, 20 years back, and you're a 4, you're a developed 4. And you walk in the room and the guy say, hey man, oh my goodness, I heard you and your band and you guys singing. It was amazing. Could you tell me? And you give them 3 points. And the person standing next to him say, man, that's a little arrogant dude. What I've come to sense is that your 4 looks arrogant to a 0. A person who even have hit the chart yet sees your 4 as arrogant. But the truth is, a person who's 4 could see a 7 as arrogant. And a 7 can look at a person who's an 8 or a 10. But watch this. If an 8 walks into a room with a 1, the 1 believes the 1 starts to fold. It's just like, oh my God, did you see? You know what I'm saying? And over the years, I struggle with that. Now, I'm asking you this because development increases confidence. Where there is no development, there is a timidness in relation to that area where confidence is. But some people judge the development through, watch this, their confidence to be an open spoke. They speak whatever they want to speak, but they're judging you not from, they're confident. Watch this. There are people who are confident to say you're arrogant, but you're simply confident in music. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You're not confident when you went to the bank to buy a house, to go to the doctor. You know what I'm saying? You're not confident when you're dealing with your teacher, your child's teacher with math. So there is these elements where you're confident because you develop, and then there are moments where you're humble because you have to learn. Talk to us about the people over the years who may have just simply not understood that you were a developing minister or a developing leader, and may have just sort of judge that position incorrectly because they don't understand the work you're putting in. Because like you said, again, to stand in front and to lead worship to an auditorium of hundreds of people, there's some strength there. But then a worship leader who's just finding himself comes to worship with you guys and sit in the back and go, I think he was a little bit too much in the front.
Yeah.
Could it be that he is more developed and groomed to the point that is causing him to show up that way? And it could be that it's just what we call maximum confidence and not arrogance.
Yeah, boy, that's such a great subject and a topic, and I think you need to write a chapter in your future book about it.
In my book.
It really is a good thing because again, we know how arrogance is an issue with your heart, and we know it's a sin. It's to be arrogant. We understand that, but I think what happens is that when you don't believe in yourself, there's no character in the Bible that we can look at that didn't walk into spaces, and I mean, I don't know. My mind goes to Paul, and when he stood before King Agrippa. I mean, he stood there confident, knowing who he was in Christ, and he could look at a king, and he could speak his mind, and he could make his stance. And we look at David, that David could walk in with just with very little experience and stand before a giant, and said, okay, what do I get if I take him down? I mean, so we look at this great confidence that is threaded through the Bible. I think for me, it happened to where I didn't believe in myself. Now, it may not have anything to do with this, but I just struggled believing in me. Mm-hmm. And I think because I was afraid if I stepped out in really having a belief in myself, that I would get tagged. And I didn't want to get tagged as being some arrogant guy. So I was fine blending into the landscape of life, and I was fine just going. And people were like, Pastor Kelly doing a great job. Oh, it's awesome. I love that song. But I would hear that, but I would just I would really just downplay it instead of just And so honestly, Ricardo, I mean, that's something that I've had to, even through all of my life in ministry, I've had to work on, is to accept the compliment. Accept the word that says, hey man, you're doing it, and be okay, and have it settled in my heart. Place it in my heart in a healthy way, and not allow it to go to my head, and just move and build on that confidence that word spoken over me was intended to do. So it was it's been a struggle for me to learn how to balance that.
Nice. It's definitely a journey. Listen, I have another question for you. Moving from worship pastor to executive pastor, now transitioning into lead pastor. In your opinion, what's the life lesson that you have captured in that transition?
There's each of those transitions you just mentioned, from worship pastor, and then I I stepped into a season of being an executive pastor, and then now I'm stepping into a season of leading pastor. Is, you know, I you have to get it settled in your heart spiritually before you can make the move physically. I mean, and I always knew that transition, whether at any function of life, not just in church life, but any function of life, any transition from a church, if you're trying to leave a church or you're trying to leave a job, or it's something that I think is a life altering decision. And I think people are so loose with transitioning even out of churches, but I just feel like it's such a life. And so I took it real seriously. And it all came to a place to where I realized that I couldn't be moved by emotion. So I had to pray my emotions away. I can't, if you can't just go, okay, I'm going to do this because I'm angry at the pastor.
Yep.
You know, I'm going to do this because I'm frustrated with it. I mean, you've got to move your emotions away and really hear spiritually what God is saying. And I think that is when it becomes right. When it becomes easy to do, transition is near. That was a thing that I learned when I went along with music ministry. When it became automatic, I knew transition was near, because what happens is ministry always requires faith. Our business always requires faith. And in faith, to me, stepping forward is when you're able to step forward and you can't see what's around the corner. When you can predict what's around the corner, it's time to transition. When it becomes easy to do, you've got to start thinking, okay, God, what's next? Because when you can rely on your skill set or your ability to do it, then all of a sudden you're not relying on God in you. Then I think it becomes a little bit challenging. And so that's the way it was for me. It was like when I got to music, it's like everything's good. This music ministry is good. We got a good team. We sounded great. All of these things, but I was unfulfilled in my heart because I was relying more on my skill set than what God was doing in me. So that led me to the transition. And it was always a burden. I mean, in order to move into any phase of ministry business, it starts with a burden in your heart. And so, man, I could talk very long about this, but it's been a journey. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question. You know, I know guys would say, man, did you always see senior pastor on you eventually? Was it a desire of your heart? Were you the worship guy when you were 20 years old who says, one day I'm gonna have a church? Now that you're in this transitional moment, looking back, what would you say was your position?
Yeah, no, I definitely didn't see myself as a lead pastor. I was fine with, the music. I was good with that. Everybody likes the music guy. Everybody likes the music guy. And so I thought, man, let's just do this, But again, it just become this unrest in my heart about it. And I knew that I couldn't just make a move, and I didn't want to make a lateral move. I didn't want to go, I'm just going to leave this church and I'm going to go and go to another church and then work, years trying to get the bad people off the microphones and, I don't want to start over, so I knew that a lateral move just wasn't for me. A lot of people do it. It wasn't for me. And so I didn't see it. And then really, even when I answered the call, it was all about the executive pastoring thing. It wasn't like, hey, hire me. I want to be an executive pastor now. It was like, I just want to take some burdens off of my pastor. And so it just kind of stumbled in. I just wanted to step into the office and go, hey, what can I do? How can I use my influence? Because at this time I've been at the church for 15 years or whatever. And so I wanted to use my influence just to help take the pressure off of pastor. So it all comes back to serving. When I first started at the church, I served the place, meaning I was a facility man. I was a custodian. I cleaned the building before I even got on the stage. I was doing that kind of thing. And a lot of people start that way, but I served the place. And then when I went from music minister to executive pastor, I went from serving the place to serving the person. And I began to serve the pastor, and I wanted to serve him. And then now I'm moving from that place of serving the pastor to serving the people. And when I first started, I wasn't ready to serve the people. Even though I led worship, I wasn't ready to serve people in this capacity. So for me, it all took me back to serving somebody and something. And I think that's where, I mean, that's my story is transition always kind of led me back to square one, but in a different room, in a different phase of my life.
I want to just drop into that before we move. We're almost done. So appreciative of you taking this time out this morning. Faithfulness. You've been faithful, man. You've been faithful to serve the house. You've been faithful to serve the man, and you've been faithful even now in the journey to serving the people. The element of faithfulness in the life of the believer, and because a lot of people don't understand the importance of not being tossed to and fro by every wind of doctrine and by the emotion that simply says, I ain't feeling this today. And everybody has their moments of feelings, but you made a commitment, you walked it out faithfully, and you're bringing yourself to a place where God is promoting you. How important is faithfulness in ministry and life in general?
Now it's everything. I think faithfulness is everything. Like you said, outside of ministry, there's no successful people that don't have a faithful spirit about them. And I think you have to be one that isn't easily moved. That's easy swayed. I've had my moments. I'm a musician. I'm an artsy guy. I'm a creative. I can have my emotional moments, but when it all settles down, it's just having that faithfulness of not getting moved by life and by stuff and by decisions and by who's leading you and your pastor and all that. And so, I think faithfulness is everything.
Nice. Let's bring it in. Man, listen, Pastor Danny, 40 plus years of ministry. What an incredible man. We love him so much. I want to ask you, and I thought I'm looking forward to asking Pastor Kelly about this question. What would you say would be 3 of your greatest life's lesson that you could see that's going to always be a part of your leadership? You'll be like, you know what? This is 100% Pastor Danny, and I caught it. I was taught it. And it's going to be with me. And I can see it as a principle. It's not something that's going to be shaken because it's time tested.
Yeah. The one we just talked about, I think faithfulness. I think something has to be said about a man that has that started in the humble beginnings and built and grown over the years. That's weathered many events in our city, many events in our country, in our world, and just stayed the course even through a pandemic. Has stayed the course. So faithfulness, I think, is something that I definitely have learned from Pastor Danny, and will always be a part of me. I'll teach it. Hopefully I'll model it. I'll continue to model it. And I think faithfulness is a big thing. Character and integrity. Pastor Ricardo, you've been on staff at our church for a long time as well. And Pastor Danny is a man of character and integrity. It's paramount. He's always walked that way. And a lot of people have told me through the years, man, you still a pathway. You've been there for how long? I was like, well, when you find a good man to follow, that's real, and that loves the Lord and loves his wife and loves his family. Man, that's I'm not a genius, but it just makes sense to stay connected to people like that, And so character and integrity was something that was paramount in his life, and it was paramount. So it became paramount in my life. And to be able to model now, I don't know if I could hold a candle to his integrity and his character, but man, I always wanted to stay close, because I felt like that was a big thing. And I think the third thing is, as I learned, and you've heard this say, is ministry is not about titles. It's about what he's always said. It's ministry is not about titles. It's about towels. It's about picking up a towel, Jesus modeled, and washing somebody's feet. And so I've adopted that. That's always important to me. If the honor of a title is great, but I'm not moved by it. I'm fine with just being who I am and not get moved with titles and everything, because a lot of people that are wearing titles that aren't doing much.
Right. Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
kingdom.
Most certainly.
So I would rather just be Kelly and try to be a shaker, a mover and a shaker in the kingdom, than to try to have a title to impress somebody. And so ministry is not about titles; it's about towels.
Archbishop Kelly James is not. You don't see that coming.
Not
the title, not the carrying of the title. Maybe the grace on the Archbishop, but not the.
I've got the business card printing right now. Actually, I'm going to release it somewhere mid 2020. Archbishop is coming.
Yeah. Oh man, thank you so much. Listen, last question, man. What do you see your future? What do you see in your future for your life and your ministry? I mean, what you have? Is there anything God sort of, showed you up to this point, or you just like, God, what are you saying for me for the next decade? Any thoughts you want to share at this point, or you're still, pulling that together?
I'm blessed having been at the church for so long. I'm standing on a great foundation. Legacy is important to our church, and as we are and have modeled and will continue to model. So I really feel like that I'm a bridge. I've said that many times. I feel like I like to say it this way. I'm young enough to still have some gas in my tank, so to speak, to run. And but I feel like I'm old enough to understand there are others that have run before me. And so I feel like that I'm holding the hands of this generation, and I'm grabbing the hands of this generation, and I'm just going to be a bridge to see that we generationally move forward as a church. And I really just considered myself, Pastor Danny, gave me a baton a few weeks ago and said, and I'm just going to run. I'm going to run my lap, I'm going to run my lap and do my very, very best to to help us, our church, move forward. And I'm just going to cast vision around the dream that has been established. The Bible says that old men dream dreams and young men see visions. I sure don't think Pastor's old, and I sure don't think I'm young, but I feel like that my responsibility is just to build vision around the dream that's established. And maybe my dream time will come. But right now in this season, my responsibility is just to build vision around the dream that's already been established, that's already in the hearts of the people. So
that's amazing, man. You have been running well, and we know that you're going to continue to run well. It's an honor of mine to serve you, and I've been serving alongside you over the years, and so I'm excited about the future. I'm excited about your leadership, taking the helm and charting the course of taking us here, a pathway into the future. And so thank you, man. Thank you for giving us some time this morning and diving into some truth. Maybe in 2021, after you've settled in the seat a moment, we may have you come back and I may be talking about that next book. And I'll say you influenced a couple of these chapters.
Hey, well, when I come back, maybe I won't have a little bit of gray hair. Hopefully it'll be still just right there. It won't be, won't be a whole lot more. Not Ricardo. I appreciate you, man. You're a blessing to our church. I mean, I know a lot of people are in our church that are watching, but I know there's many people from the Bahamas and various places, and you're the real deal, man. And you're not just effective living, but you love the local church, you serve the local church, and you bring so much value to what we're doing at Pathway.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, sir. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Effective Living. Remember now, you are responsible for creating the life you desire. God has given you something that the world needs. You just heard Pastor Kelly James' story on his journey. You too have a story. Continue to be faithful to where you've been called to serve, be it corporate, be it ministry, be it in education or entertainment, politics, wherever it is, be found faithful. So on that final day, you can hear, well done. Have a phenomenal day, guys. Enjoy the day to the fullest. Bye-bye, everyone.